Are you thinking about New Year's resolutions, goals for your Irish learning? I have a few suggestions that you can think about at any time of year. Number 1. Get a handle on sentences with the copula, especially those that require what I think of as that extra pronoun, the proleptic pronoun, whether that's in a classification sentence like is skrifnor mohara, my friend is a writer, or in an identification or equation sentence such as sé an skrifnor mohara, my friend is the writer, or the writer is my friend, depending how you interpret that. Sources vary and seem to conflict on this, but here's Nancy Stenson's grammar. If two common noun phrases are linked, the first is usually interpreted as the new information of the sentence. So to answer which person is the teacher, for the priest is the teacher, she would have sé an sagart an muntóir, and vice versa for the teacher is the priest. Many other sources, including this German one, seem to say the opposite. A site made by a very knowledgeable learner, or like this site which seems to say it the other way round from Stenson, but maybe I'm just splitting hairs here or thinking too much in English. And Teach Yourself Irish, when it comes to proper names, certainly reads it left to right. As does this Irish grammar book from Teach Yourself. Ishi Mored Aruni. Mored is the secretary. Tell me how you understand this. I'm still figuring these ones out. But back to those little proleptic pronouns. Nancy Stenson in her Irish grammar book says, only a pronoun can immediately follow the equational copula. Any definite noun following is must be preceded by a simple pronoun of matching gender and number as above, in her example. This extra pronoun adds no meaning and is not translated, but is merely a grammatical requirement of is. And you'll find lots of different explanations about why that is the case. But for an English speaker learning Irish, it's quite tricky to remember that you need that pronoun as well as the actual noun. Is getting a grip on the Irish copula one of your goals for this new year? Please tell me in the comments everything you know about it and everything that baffles you. Here's my second Irish language goal for the new year. Tell me if it's anything like yours. I need to get a handle on the verbal noun, especially when it involves a direct object pronoun. What is a verbal noun? Examples, ring any bells? If you've been studying Irish, you will probably have come across verbal nouns from the very beginning because they're such a common structure. And in fact, we have something similar in some ways in English when we use the gerund, when we have a noun ending in ing, and also the present participle when somebody is doing something. So Irish is a little bit like that, although there are some differences. You can say something like he is hitting the wall, but if you want to say he is hitting it, you can't do it the way we do in English. You can't use that it, it's a different structure. This is what I need to come to terms with. And I plan to do a video exploring how this works for practice, for myself and for you. So in Irish, if you want to say, for instance, he is hitting it, you have to say he is to its hitting. That's quite a different structure from English. Let's have a look at the forms this might take, whether that's standard or in dialects. This is from a site that's all in German if you happen to speak that language, but here with English explanation. I'll put the link below to that German site. See the pattern there, quite literally, to my beating, to your beating, to his beating. Or from Gaeilge dialect from learning Irish. Same kind of structure, but a different way of saying them. So if you've studied this structure already, how is it done in the dialect you're learning? Please let me know. Resolution number 3. Get a better grip on the distinction between slender and broad consonants. Now, some of you may already know I have done a video exploring the differences between broad and slender R. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I've also done one more generally on the ideas of broad and slender, but it's an ongoing process for me. One that I find particularly difficult to hear the difference in some words, is the letter N. The distinction between broad and slender isn't always clear to my English-speaking ear. I like to use sites like abair.ie and fuaimeanna.ie to listen to exact recordings of words, and on those sites you can actually choose units of words to hear the specific sounds. I'll link those below. My fourth resolution is also to do with sounds, with pronunciation and hearing the difference. And it has to do with Lenition when it involves the letter S, because I'm learning from books and the internet, not from actually being among speakers, like many of you out there. And there are some things that elude me until they're clearly and overtly explained. When S is lenited to SH at the beginning of a word, it makes the sound of H, like an H sound. But there are some subtle differences in words. So for instance, when you have a word like shoulder, address, or a name like Sean, when it lenites to an SH, you actually get a kind of hy sound in there because of the way the vowels are, a short vowel before a long vowel. I assume that that's why. So hyola, and I can show you in the Teach Yourself Irish book how this is kind of approximated with transcriptions in brackets, hyola and shine. But you can't extend that to other words, because if you get a word like shan, old, it becomes han, not hyan. Likewise, the name Seamus becomes a Hamish. So this is a bit of a grappling point for me, knowing when exactly those sounds will happen that way. And it does seem, as I say, to be related to the vowel sounds that follow, whether that hy sound is there or not. For those puzzling over pronunciation, I've also got a video on why a certain letter seems to disappear when it's pronounced in Irish. So check that one out if you're interested in these issues of pronunciation. My fifth and final resolution for the new year for today, and I'm sure I'll come up with others as the new year proceeds, is to commit to memorizing more prepositional pronouns and their uses. So not just the inflected prepositions, but actually the phrases in which they become meaningful. So we know what prepositions are. If you don't, they're those little words that are used before nouns and pronouns to tell what the relationship is, whether that's location or time or direction or some other relation between things. Gabriel Rosenstock, in his book Beginner's Irish, which I was fortunate enough to be given for Christmas, calls prepositions the building blocks of Irish. And it's true that you can't build real fluency without knowing them, without understanding how they work. And this is true across most languages. You can instantly tell when someone's a learner because the prepositions in their own language influence what they say in English. And the same is true in Irish. It's a quirky but informative book by one who's also a poet in the Irish language. In fact, Rosenstock says, noun centering. One could say that Irish is a noun-centered language. And because of that, prepositions become exceedingly important because they are the connectors or the things that create the relationships between nouns and other things. Quoting his book again, he says, to ask are you hungry in Irish, you would say, a will ochras ort, a will ochras ort. Literally, is there hunger on you? The noun ochras here is used here in preference to the adjective ochrach. These are perfectly natural in Irish. It's only when the sentences are translated into another language and another culture that they may sound quaint or odd. The conventions and the mindset of one language can never be used to evaluate another. And he goes on to give other examples of those kinds of states, tart orm, and so on. Anyway, so in addition to talking about the language being noun-centered, he focuses heavily on prepositions. And in fact, the book claims to be the, quote, first Irish language primer for beginners to emphasize the importance of these small words that go a long way, by which he means prepositions. Okay, so I'm not talking about prepositional pronouns yet, but the prepositions themselves in, at, to, from, with, and so on. And at the top of each page, where his chapter 10 gives usages for each preposition, he also gives the prepositional pronoun forms. So he does 6 different prepositions in detail like this, and afterwards there are exercises to practice them, which is incredibly useful because Irish does something with prepositions that English doesn't do. It merges them together with pronouns. Not all prepositions, but a large number of them. You can see the example across the top of the page here. And with these inflected prepositions, also called prepositional pronouns, many Irish idioms are formed. So it's not just a matter of learning how to say at me, with you, for him as merged words, but also about learning the turns of phrase and the added nuances or resonances that certain constructions have. So fui, about or under, joins with me to make fum. And one of the ways that prepositional pronoun can be used is in the expression of intention to do a thing. Tá fumru da dhéanamh. I plan this year to do a video really doing a deep dive into those, so stay tuned for that. And maybe let me know what you find hardest or easiest about them. In the meantime, if you feel like revising other aspects of Irish grammar that I've been sharing as I learn, why not have a look at some of the other videos on this channel? I'll see you in my Irish playlist. Á bhliain faoi mhaise daoibh.